Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you've had a good lunch or a break or a chance to look at the sun in some respect. Thanks to you who stuck with us from the morning. I've had a few calls over lunch, and the feedback is that it's going well. It's been very useful. So thank you for those of you who told me that. I'm certainly enjoying it, and I think it's packed full of really optimistic messages. Not only are there jobs aplenty, but there's enjoyable places to jump into a career on the land. And hopefully you found that the speakers we had this morning have balanced informing and inspiring us about career opportunities that exist, as well as tangible ways to get into those. And as we go through this afternoon, we've got another session of that, which we're about to do. In the screen you can see is Clive's, who I'll introduce in a moment. And then after him, we're going to the next step stage, where we look at really drilling down to what you can do now at whatever stage you're at in your resettlement career to take positive control of getting into a land-based career. So I'm delighted that Clive Blacker of Map of Ag has found the time to join us for the ill-fated straight after lunch spot, and we've put it there because I think it's one of the more inspiring opportunities that's there for people coming out of the armed forces, a great many of whom have really deep technical skills, and some don't realise just what technical transferable skills they have. And I'm hoping that Clive is going to show us, give us a window into the way there's a data and technology revolution going on in agriculture, and that does map more broadly than just food production, and also how that might offer opportunities to a wide range of service leavers. Clive, thanks ever so much for giving us your time, and I'm very much looking forward to what you've got to say for our service leavers. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to anyone. It's quite a different experience presenting when you can't see your audience, and I was always taught to try and imagine people naked, but it's obviously quite difficult when you can't see anyone. On that note, I was once told that I had the sort of face that was good for radio, and in favour of saving bandwidth, I'm going to turn my video off. So I've given you a quick hello, and while I'm presenting, I shall go blind. So my plan today is to talk to you about in the next 20 minutes or so about the opportunity of where agriculture is going from a technology perspective, and some of the opportunities for careers that could well be available to people from an agricultural perspective. And agriculture, I think, is as a sector probably the most diverse industry I can think of. I don't know another industry where their skill sets from chemistry to physics to biology to genetics to space to modelling to digital and quantum, any aspect of opportunity exists in agriculture. And it's often classed as an industry that is classed as dull, dangerous and dirty. And what I want to try and do this afternoon is just dispel some of those myths and show you some of the exciting progressions that technology is going on a road to support agriculture going forward. So my first slide, I like the way that Fiona introduced sowing the seed. Agriculture is a number of different industries all in one. There's a lot of mechanical opportunities in agriculture. If Jeremy's on, then he'll be appreciating the John Deere tractors that I've got on show here. But you can see that there are still cultivations going on. People still do plough, but then the drill that you can see the back of, and my brother there with his tractor, he's practicing direct drilling as different approaches to target establishments of crops. And it's a very diverse sector. All the tractors today, or certainly the high-end tractors, will all have auto steer. the industry is becoming very, very reliant on satellite technology, and that's for a number of different reasons. So from remote sensing, so we can look, as you'll be, I'm sure, used to in space, but not with in the military. Look on different areas. I am quite jealous of the opportunities that you have and the capability that the military has that we don't, with resolution and opportunities. But certainly the opportunity for remote sensing. Communication is a massive opportunity with any of you with SATCOM's experience. Rural areas, as I'm sure you'll be well aware, are often not supported particularly well by mobile phone, and moving data and information around is becoming a new norm in agriculture, and communication is going to be vitally important. And the final area is obviously the meteorological aspect of what we all rely on from the satellite perspective with our radars for monitoring weather and weather forecasting. So there's a huge amount of data in that area. The opportunity for those with modelling skills and all sorts of others really does present a very attractive opportunity in terms of a career. It's not just arable that's technological. Obviously, levels of precision will vary in livestock. And as a guy that is an arable farmer, I am very jealous to some extent of the opportunity that data and technology have in a dairy environment, for example. It's very high tech. Farmers aren't looking at a herd of cattle anymore. They're looking at individual cattle. So you can see there's a yellow tag in this cow's ear. In this particular case, this is just a reference of the animal identification. It's its passport, and that tracks it through its life. The more modern tags these days are all using RFID, so radio frequency identification, so that each animal can be monitored and without having to grab hold of its ear and try and read something that might be covered in something perhaps not as attractive as grass. But equally, the technology in this industry is also moving on to robotics, and this is what we call an astronaut. It's a robotic milking machine. It's taking some of the labour out of agriculture. It's allowing the cow's freedom of opportunity for milking, and the cow can come in whenever it wants to go and get milked, typically 2 to 3 times a day. And it's fed a ration appropriate to the amount of milk it's delivered. And if it's just a greedy old cow that likes to go in thinking she's going to get fed, then it will chuck her out until she's ready to give some milk. Robotics are thoroughly influencing the precision that people can pay to livestock, particularly in dairies, and they can monitor over 140 different parameters on an animal when it's being milked. So huge amount of data coming into dairy farms that's really allowing farmers the opportunity to start and think about what they can do with animal welfare in different ways, animal measurements in different ways, but really challenging and thinking in general about the opportunities of how that animal can be treated in a different way and be more productive. It's not just dairy. Robotics is a whole sector that I'm going to talk quite a lot about this afternoon, but labour supply is one of the big issues that farmers face. There's manual labour shortages in huge swaths of UK agriculture at the moment, particularly in the horticulture sector. And robotics have certainly been adopted in different ways to see if they can be adapted, for example, for the fruit sector, for picking apples or strawberries. And anybody with any mechanical experience of understanding actuators or different technologies that are capable of precise positioning, there's an emerging sector that is all about robotics and lighting and different opportunities in which crops can be grown and without necessarily the manual need for labour. And this is a necessity for agriculture. People in the UK don't particularly like working on farms. They don't like the outdoors environment and they find it challenging. They don't like the hard work. So technology is being developed to try and overcome some of these shortages that there are in labour from the manual perspective. But if any of you love being outside in the outdoors, then certainly apple picking jobs, strawberry picking jobs, all sorts of fruit picking opportunities exist to allow people the opportunity to still do the manual bits they might well enjoy. And agriculture is developing. Farmers are moving on from with the opportunities of satellites from a positioning perspective to think about how they can treat fields. So conventionally, farmers will have used one field and had an application rate, a prescription perhaps for each individual field, where a treatment is delivered across it in one standard form. So a set seed rate, for example, the amount of plants per square metre would be set, and the metering mechanism on a drill would plant that all the way across the field, even if the soil varied. However, technology is allowing us the opportunity to look at splitting these up. The use of GPS has meant that not only can we use it for automation of machines, but equally capturing data in different areas. And you can see we've split that field into other areas. As technology develops with imaging, for example, it's now possible to use individual cameras or cameras to individually identify particular weeds in different fields, and potentially even new technologies that will allow us to get down to leaf level and look within a leaf to analyse any disease or factors that could be influencing a leaf. Our ability, certainly in terms of capturing data and monitoring things, is far better than it is from an engineering perspective, and there are huge gaps in the industry for technological people that can help with that, and I'll explain that in a moment. Farmers are often presented with a bright data insight future, having a connected farm where they have the ability to see and monitor different sensors and weather conditions and animal health, monitor crops with cameras from UAVs and drones, looking at managing machines through telemetry and different types of communication devices. However, at this stage, it's a very desperate system. What it means is that from a farming perspective, the farmer has lots of sources of different information, and as such, he's really struggling to handle the different platforms that are available, because there are so many that don't necessarily talk to each other. So computer coding, computer programming skills and modeling skills with people with the capability to be disruptive, that can really open up the opportunity to really target and understand variability within data sets and join these together, there's real opportunity. A typical farm would potentially have up to 40 different types of information coming from all sorts of different sectors, whether it be farm inputs, enterprise data, production, marketing or produce, planning or capex, compliance that is generally required, that is a real problem to a lot of farmers, is making sure that we have the paperwork in order, that consumers can be confident in the quality of the food that's produced and that it's being done ethically and sensibly. There's a huge amount of data that's being captured, and farmers really do struggle at times to capture all of this. And technology absolutely influences every part of the production system. In this arable system here, for example, you can see that all the way through crop production, there's an opportunity for us to put new sensors on vehicles to target our inputs that would allow us then to really, by measuring things, manage our costs and understand our costs. We can then map and measure the variability that might occur in fields, so that we can do soil analysis on those to identify physical parameters or the different chemical parameters of the soil that really identify how much plant food might be available, so we can make sure that plants aren't starved and they get the right amount. We can then perhaps even target weeds and other things. But every aspect of the opportunity of growing a crop or producing livestock will capture some form of data that makes that really important, and having those skills to be able to do that. And this is an example of just how we use some of the data that we capture on our farms. So you can see there's a multitude of different technologies that we're using. So if I start in the top right corner, you can see that I've got a telephone. The telephone is becoming a fundamental part of a data capture tool, being able to take pictures, being able to record things and position, because they're all embedded with GPS, to record information and time is becoming really critical. Underneath there, you can see a buggy that we use for collecting soil. Currently, we have to still send soil off to laboratories where they get physical chemical analysis. And above that, to the top right, you can see that there's a different chemical analysis of the soil that highlights in a traffic light system to the farmer where there may be issues. So anything red needs addressing, but anything green is showing that the crop has got sufficient. We can use the GPS positioning to then target and understand that information and map out variability in fields. And this is where the GIS modeling comes in, and the GIS data tools come in for capturing data. The maps at the bottom of the field there, you can see one is a map that I've created just by taking photos going across a field and then interpolating those into different values. The map to the left of that is a map that shows you then variability within soil nutrients. And what I can do with that data is then apply the appropriate amount of data to the farm, to the field, on 10 by 10 meter grids to allow the crop to make sure it's got sufficient plant food, that it's not deficient in nutrients. We use satellite technology for remote sensing, and also in the top left you'll see that there's a sensor that's on top of a tractor cab. Both of these are systems that are utilised for measuring variability within crop canopies that allow us to understand whether there's more or less crop, whether there's deficiencies in crop, and understand the cause of those variabilities. So in real time, as a device drives through a field, it's got the ability to target and understand how much fertilizer, for example, to apply. And this sort of technology uses optical systems. It's using the near-infrared spectrum. So people with different physical understandings and different light and spectrum experience gives a real opportunity for careers in that sector. This is just a very crude picture. This is just showing us a satellite image of a field. And you'll notice perhaps there's a red stripe in the middle of this field, and this is just a positional error with the satellite data, because obviously agriculture isn't blessed with the wonderful resources that the military has for positioning accuracy with data. So the opportunity to target inputs can be sometimes misleading if we're measuring the wrong areas because of what we take from space. But this is the sort of map that shows a farmer. The blue areas indicate very high crop growth. Red areas are indicating areas of low crop growth, and it gives a farmer an opportunity to try and understand what he may need to do to a field or to a crop or to a plan to really be able to target inputs in different ways to fulfill the requirements of that. And this slide is just showing a tractor cab with the amount of different sensors. You can see there's 4 or 5 different types of sensors that are fitted to this schematic, just giving a perspective of the levels of different technology that's becoming available. And what you can see is that the technology is becoming smaller. It's getting more localized, because I think in the future we will move our technology away from being large, broad scale to being far more infinite. One of the opportunities that we have within our business is seasonal work to try and help farmers measure soil and understand the chemical inputs of the soil. And this is the sort of buggy that operators would utilize. So there's a hydraulic sampler that pulls soil cores out of the ground. They're put into bags that are georeferenced. We print labels and stick them on the bag, so we've got traceability, and that data then goes off. And I've seen some wonderful pictures of one of our machines down in Cornwall this week in the beautiful weather, thoroughly enjoying the grassland and the weather that they're experiencing down there. It's not always like that. We can get them stuck fast, and it can be wet and miserable. So I don't want to paint too rosy a picture on the British climate and the British weather, but when the weather is beautiful, it's certainly wonderful. The data that vehicle collects is generally then mapped with GIS systems, and this is a cloud-based platform we've developed that allows us to demonstrate to a farmer variability of nutrient content in soil. So you can see blue areas here are very high nutrient content, where there's lots of plant available food, but areas that are red and yellow and brown, they're suggesting areas where we've got a deficiency in nutrient availability, and that we should really be thinking about how we address those within the crop and make sure that there's plenty of food available to the plant from our fertilizer spreaders. So as a fertilizer spreader goes from an area that's blue, it may put no fertilizer on, to areas that are orange or yellow, it will put more on as it progressively moves through those as the farmer drives through the field. We've got all sorts of opportunities with remote sensing and satellites, and any of you that may have been privileged enough to use UAVs or drones, these are certainly something that give us a new opportunity to look at data and capture data in a lot higher resolution than we're used to, and certainly I think in a higher resolution than we're capable of using properly. but it does lead to a whole host of opportunities for new GIS measurements and new tools and capabilities that will need to be developed to meet the capabilities of what we can do with that. And you can see, so at the moment, a drone, for example, I could map things to at least 5 centimetre resolution. The problem that agriculture faces is that I've got a picture of a sprayer here. It has a boom that's 24 metres wide in this particular case, and that means I've only got one application rate across the whole boom width, which defeats the object really of using something with as high resolution capabilities as a UAV. And perhaps one reason they're not as popular as they could be, because we don't have the ability properly yet with the engineering skills that are required to develop new thinking and new technology around how we can apply plant protection products to get the best out of it. You can see here, this is the sort of variability that you can see under a sprayer boom. And some of this is man-made. We've got red areas in here which are tram lines behind the tractor, but you can see there's compaction in other areas where very wet conditions when the field was being drilled caused it to compact the ground so solid that seeds couldn't germinate particularly well. But it gives you a flavour of the sort of capability that we have with it. There's other technology that's been developed and started to utilise with LiDAR. It's becoming far more useful in terms of being able to map and capture 3-dimensional objects. It gives us all sorts of opportunity to really position things in new ways, and I think from an environmental perspective going forward will give us an ability to be able to post-process data that's collected potentially by drones, planes or scanners on machines that we can then utilise for measuring the size of a tree and potentially the amount of carbon we've got in there, and the environmental benefit that farmers are offering then the opportunity for plant health and nutrition. And this is the sort of other thing. It can be used for topological mapping, so we can then target water flows, nutrient flows, and start thinking about inputs from in a lot higher resolution than is currently available. There's also opportunities for robotics, and I've got a couple of videos I'm going to show you. Obviously, as agriculture has moved on, we used to be very manual with using horses and ploughing every inch of the field. As technology progressed and horsepower increased, we decided that hedges weren't as good and made the fields bigger in an aim to mechanise and do more with less people. As people left agriculture, to having some really large-scale machines. One of the opportunities for the future is certainly around robotics, and we have the opportunity to take this forward by looking at some of the projects and things that we're working with different technologies. And as a company, we work with GPS systems to allow us to develop robots, and I'll show you a couple of visits in a minute. But you may be wondering why on earth I've even got a picture of a Mars rover in a slide deck talking about agriculture. But some of the chemical analysis that the Mars rover is capable of with its optical and technological robotic instruments are something that we're currently working with Airbus to see if that can be utilised in our fields to give us better, quicker, more detailed nutrient analysis of our soils to give us better fertiliser prescriptions. Obviously, farmers will have a lot to think about in terms of going forward. And for some reason, my video is not playing. I don't know whether you can see that or not. It would appear that's not going to work, so I'll skip that one. And the next one's probably going to do the same. I was going to show you a wonderful example of how our robots are operating in fields. Yeah,
it's the videos, Clive. The slides are okay. I just don't think there's enough power to get it through the system. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I apologise for that. I had some wonderful videos that showed you our wonderful robots working up and down fields. If any of you use Twitter, you'll be able to see news feeds from the hands-free hectare. If you look for the hands-free hectare or the hands-free farm, oh, something's coming. It's playing slowly. I don't know whether you can see that.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, you've got something going through.
So you can see this is the sort of robotic developments that we're working towards. I'm hoping that you can all see this, where you've got unmanned machines now that are doing the operations of formerly manned machines. and we're developing technologies and capabilities to be able to really show and show the opportunity that's available with robots, with our thinking that this can help with more accurate treatments to improve yields, but also protect soils, because smaller machines, we believe, aren't as damaging to soils. And soils are certainly becoming something of big focus to a lot of farmers from an environmental perspective. I hope that played for you, that video. So if not, please contact me and I shall send you a link to it. The last part of the video showed a combine harvester, and these can be fitted with different sensors that can map variability across fields. And again, if you recognize this map, it's a field that we looked at earlier from satellite, where you can see quite clearly where there was blue areas on the satellite image. We have now green areas that are indicating higher yield, where there was red areas are showing lower yield. So there's good correlations between different technologies to show variation in crop yields that farmers can then utilize to start thinking about logistics and planning and how they may grow crops in the future. Finally, this is the new soil sampling stuff that we're working on currently using the ExoMars rover and the technology that was developed for that. We've identified that it's not going to be a tool we can use, although we did try and play with the Mars rover in an arable perspective, but unfortunately it's not capable of the outputs that agriculture requires. So we're taking the sensors from the vehicle and actually now putting those onto field-based machines using space technology and different optical systems and lasers to analyze our soils going forward. And that was all I was going to show you. I thought that would give you a sort of flavour of overview on where technology is, and leave the opportunity to ask questions.
Well, that's an amazing overview of the huge advances in technology that are changing the way our food is produced. Before I open up for wider questions, Clive, could I ask you to just talk about some of the colleagues you have working with you? Because I have a feeling that whilst you clearly have some with an agricultural background, you'll have others that have come into your business from all sorts of different backgrounds, bringing a diversity of skills. Could you give us an idea of what that looks like, please?
Yeah, certainly. So our business is very diverse. From a computer perspective, we have coders that have come that have programming skills that know absolutely nothing at all about agriculture. In fact, they know nothing at all about the outdoors, it would appear sometimes. We have engineers that work with us that help us fit different machines with technology. And that can be all sorts of different things that can vary from hydraulic expertise all the way through to electronic expertise, through to just practical engineering skills. Within the business, we have veterinary surgeons and veterinary experience who understand animals. We've also got a number of other different positions where we take people, and we've used people from the forces in the past to come and help us collect soil from the soil sampling opportunities that we have, where we just need people that have a good literacy with computers that would give us an opportunity to then send them out to go and collect soil and operate the buggies and just make sure that they've got enough practical experience that they can drive safely and can follow instructions clearly and look after the machinery. So it's very, very varied.
Brilliant. If we have got any other questions, now would be the time to ask them. And while anybody uncloaks themselves to do that, could I just ask if you've got those links to those two videos, one of which played and the other I don't think did. If you're able to, if you could put those in the chat. If not, if you email them to me and I'll put them in the chat just so that everybody can play those later, that would be brilliant.
No problem.
Thank you, Clive. Does anyone have any questions for Clive?
Yes, I've got a question if it's available.
Go. Hello, Bruce.
So, Clive, I'm interested in robotics and looking to move into agritech. I'm currently doing a robotics master's with Harper Adams. I'm leaving in October, and that's kind of where I'm going. But I'm looking at setting up my own business in agritech. And I was wondering where map of ag kind of lie in? Are you just like a research department, or do you kind of do your own projects and principles yourself?
No, everything within Map of Ag we do is for a commercial reason. So currently, for example, some of the research that we've got ongoing is you'll be familiar with the hands-free hectare at Harper Adams.
Yeah.
That's about us exploring the opportunity that robotics will offer for us from a data perspective, as much as it is from an engineering perspective, to where technology may go in the future. So it is very varied. Everything is done as enabling capability. Some of the funding that's available through Innovate UK give us the opportunity to de-risk some of these things that are risky, that as a business we probably wouldn't have done ourselves in the past. And it gives us the opportunity to work with different skill sets from different sectors as well, where we can pull in experience from engineering companies, from companies like Linac, who do lots of linear actuators to try and help us with robotics, to try and then pull different technologies into a sector that we understand very well, but utilize new technologies that currently are maybe used elsewhere, but developing them for agricultural purposes. So everything we do is always, there's always a commercial angle to it, and certainly if you are looking for funding, Innovate UK is a great source of doing that. But you do need to make sure you've got a sound business plan to exploit your ideas at the end of it.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any more questions for Clive or comments? Okay, well, time to make your post-lunch cup of tea, and then we'll come back in a couple of minutes. 10 past. Anna Baker-Cresswell from HighGround will talk about the rural weeks. We've then got Professor Louise Manning from the Royal Ag University talk about the rural business course. Then Jeremy Gibbs from Forces Farming, and then Andy Lee is going to talk about the opportunities volunteering offers, including the £1,600 worth of training he's got out of volunteering so far as part of his resettlement. Clive, thanks ever so much. That's been a real eye-opener. And we'll take a pause now and see you all in a couple of moments. Thank you very much. Clive, that was great. I'm still hiding behind here. That was really good. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, no, pleasure. Hopefully it showed some of the variety.
Exactly. And what we had this morning, we had a session on agriculture. By accident, we've tended to be a little cattle heavy today, but we had a contrast between a chat through really sort of traditional intensive rearing, and then a bit about regenerative farming. So actually, you're offering a third perspective on kind of where we're going and how we deliver that and how we render technology is, I think, actually probably concluded the picture, or at least the introduction, very well. So it's brilliant, actually.
Excellent. No, pleasure to help, and I'd love to support further if I can.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that between what Jeremy's up to and what I'm up to, we will give you that opportunity. I'll be in touch.
No problem.
Really kind. Thank you. Hi Anna, how you doing?
Hello, Fiona. How are you doing? How's it going?
Yeah, well, it seems to be going pretty well, I think.
Good. Oh, good. Good.
My computer crashed at lunchtime, which, wasn't great.
That's not very tactful of it.
No, it gave me a moment's pause, let's put it that way.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
it literally gave me a pause. I had to reboot the whole thing, but we seem to be going okay again.
Oh, dear.
You were on for a bit of it this morning, I think, were you? And
well, yes, I just wanted to make sure I knew what because I'm not used to Teams. I'm a Zoom person mostly, so I just wanted to make sure I roughly knew where I was going. That was all.
Okay. Well, I've got. I'll just show it to you now. There's no harm in that. So I've got that for you. That's what I'm going to.
Oh, look! I see what you did there. Career Fields, great pun.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. So yeah, there we go. I didn't notice that at all. So there you go. But yes, put that up. Do you want me to put that up just for your whole thing, or?
Might as well. I mean, if it helps people to think. I mean, this is going to be very broad brush compared to these wonderful subject matter experts. I mean, I'm no expert in anything, as you know, but.
Well, what we're doing now, as I hope is clear from the programme, is shifting gear from that whole sort of inform and inspire through to now. Okay, what do you do now? What's the tangible step you take?
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, you're setting the tone for that, which is great.
God, you've had a busy old day though.
Yeah, I did at one stage worry that I had too much content, but actually 20-minute slots has been enough because some people have been quite technical.
Yeah.
And but I don't think they've lost too many people actually, because it was, because they only had 20 minutes, they couldn't get into their hobby subject too much.
You're quite right. You're quite right. And that's the thing, when people know about something, they're so desperate to share it. They don't realise that not everybody might be quite as interested as they are. But
it doesn't apply today, but I've done different events where I've seen that risk coming, and that's why I take an interview approach, because then it's legitimate for me to interrupt them.
Yes.
But I hasten to add that hasn't applied at all today. It seems to have, people have been very good actually at sticking to times and stuff, which I think is quite important as well when you've got a busy programme.
I agree with you. And I'm going to I think that's right. And surely that's to do with your good briefing. If you brief them well enough, then they know what you're expecting of them.
Yeah, well, hopefully people have hit the mark, and it's been informative for people. Certainly, the feedback I had at lunchtime was that it was pitched out right. So that's reassuring.
Oh, that's great. Really good news.
It's good. Cool. Well, we'll give people a couple more minutes to put a splash of milk in their tea, and then we will crack on.
That's brilliant.
Hi, Fiona. Jeremy.
Oh, hello.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, Anna. How you doing?
Hi. It's the closest we've got to talking for a while.
I know. Do you know what? I have to apologise. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm teasing.
Oh dear. I popped in a few minutes ago. I just caught the end of Clive's presentation.
Yeah, it was good actually. I was just saying to him, I don't know if you heard that, because of what we had this morning, and it has been a bit cattle heavy, just sort of by accident. We had the sort of a little bit on intensive cattle rearing, or mostly dairy, a little bit on a regenerative agriculture from a beef farmer, and then he did his bit, and it's just kind of given three really different perspectives on what you might have started the day thinking was the same business.
Yeah.
Which I think is a wonderful thing about today, is it's just exposing the massive variety of stuff there is out there. Yeah,
exactly. It's like I keep saying to someone, it's no longer chasing sheep and planting seeds.
Afternoon all. I'm spying. It's Sarah. Hi.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
I'm hiding in the wings. Are you well?
All we need now is Penny's 70th birthday to just finish the whole thing.
Oh my God! Do you think she's got over a hangover yet?
No,
just keep drinking.
All right. Here we go then. Okay, welcome back, folks. So we have got these 4 talks to give us really those tangible steps that you can take now. With all these individuals are involved in helping you find your way into a career on the land. And as you know, I put great store on what I call the gateway job, but there are also different gateways. We've heard about the value of experience. There are some cases where qualifications are important, and we'll touch on those. But a lot of this is about how you get experience and how you get to really discover what it is that interests you amongst this huge variety of opportunity. And so I'm delighted to welcome Anna Baker-Cresswell. Anna's been operating this space for, I think, 8 years plus, and she's going to hone in on rural weeks that are very well known and have been delivering really rich experiences to help people choose and discover what they want to do. So Anna, please, the floor, as they say, is yours.
Oh, thank you, Fiona, very much, and hello everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity just to tell everyone a little bit about Rural Weeks and what they're about. This is very, very broad brush. I mean, what you've had this morning is, I haven't been sitting in on all of it, but fantastic selection of real proper subject matter experts. I developed the concept of Rural Weeks back in 2014 when we started at Plumpton College, and it was really to give people who are thinking about leaving the military, and they know they don't want to work in an office, but that's probably about all they definitely know. I just wanted to give people a bit of an overview of what's in the land-based sector, and as you'll have discovered this morning, it's huge, and I think given the situation that the country and the world finds itself in now, I don't think there's ever been a more I wouldn't say better time, but the time is absolutely right for, I don't think qualifications and networks and face-to-face and who you know has ever been more important than what it is now. I didn't put that very well, but I hope you kind of get the drift of what I'm trying to say. So Fiona's put up a slide here. Great pun, by the way, Fiona. This is really what a Rural Week covers. And as I say, it is a broad overview. We can't teach you how to be a farmer in 5 days, but if it helps you to see, if you might have been thinking about forestry, for example, you'll have the opportunity to talk to a subject matter expert about forestry during the week, and you might find, you know, having talked to them and having thought about it a bit more is something that you're not quite as interested as you thought you were. Or on the other hand, it might be something that if you've got some LCAS points, you're wondering how to spend them. There might be something that you think, do you know, I could really properly do this, and that means you don't have to burn them on health and safety. So I'm not sure really what else I can say other than we do them at Bicton College. They're free at the point of delivery. I raise all the money from corporate supporters and service benevolent funds. It's a combination of service leavers and veterans. We will be rolling them out to Askham Bryan College, which is near York. We were going to do it this autumn, but we've had to can that one. So we'll have to wait till next spring for that. But I don't know if anyone's got any questions, but that's probably, I hope that's given you just a bit of a broad brush, and I'd be delighted to answer any questions, well, try, that anyone might have.
Thanks, Anna. Does anyone have any questions for Anna? Can you have without obviously naming names and so forth, but just give us an idea. I think you have, I think is it eight people on the course? Just a cross section of people that might be on a typical course. What are their backgrounds or stages in military career or resettlement career?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Sorry, I should have really mentioned that. It's a very broad brush. It's across all 3 services. We get some people have done their 22. Some people have done 3 or 4 years and they just want to change. Some people are being medically discharged. It really is very, very broad. I think that the common denominator is everybody's looking forwards towards what they're going to do next. So it's a great leveler, and I think that's one of the things about it being the Rural Week being residential, is we get to know each other, and it can be very helpful from that point of view, because it's a very important time in life, I think, to be trying to work out, not I've got to get a job, but what do I really, really want to do?
Yeah, I've recently started adopting terminology where I talk about career seekers and career developers. And for me, it's been useful to think about people's approaches and stages in that way. And because I think, and some people are still career seekers well after the time they've stopped drawing the Queen's shilling. And so it's no surprise that they perhaps grab at the first job available or go into a panic because they have no idea what they want to do. Whereas others are career developers where they've taken the first job and they're reasonably confident that it's a step on the way to what they want to do, or it's at least in the ballpark. And I think, if I'm right, what you're doing is really helping those career seekers just have a brief touch of a wide variety of things, just to help them, even if it's just eliminate a couple of things so they don't waste time and energy on them. But obviously, hopefully, to hone down on a couple of things that are worth pursuing.
Yes, you're quite right. And I think once we'll be onto the CTP website by the end of June. And I think what's really important is the sooner we can engage with people, or any of us who are presenting through these excellent days that you're running, or any other way, the sooner we can help people who are, as you say, career developers, if you like, to factor the land-based sector into their planning, the better. Because sometimes we'll find a veteran who, you know, maybe they've been out for 3 or 4 years and they've had several jobs. None of them have really quite stuck, and life has sort of begun to unravel. And if we can catch people way, way, way further back than that I think it will be a great measure for success. I feel. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or queries? Matt, you've put something in the chat. Did you want to mention that more widely?
Yes, if that's okay, please. Myself, my wife and our family, we're looking at a complete family change. We both currently work in London, central London, big money jobs, and it's just not the life that we want anymore. We've been planning a move to small holding for the last 5 or 6 years. And we're pretty much there now. We were going to exchange in mid-June, but unfortunately Corona has put an end to that and the sellers have taken their property off the market. So we're back to looking again. We've gone through the whole process of being with Hero Pronteurs and talking to Peter and all those guys. So we know our plan is strong, shall we say. But it's then just looking at ways in which we can monetize it in a different manner. So we're not just the guys selling eggs at the bottom of the drive, if that makes sense. So it's kind of seeing where we can move forward and be just a little bit different.
Absolutely. Oh, listen, this is really, really exciting time for you. I think that one of the biggest things is to understand that where you end up, in other words, what your small holding looks like, will be the key driver about what your different offerings are. I mean, it's very, very tempting to try and, whilst not putting all your eggs in one basket, I know you were talking about eggs earlier on, but it's very tempting to have a sort of scattergun approach and say, oh, we'll have some ducks and we'll have some hens and we'll have a couple of this and a couple of that. If you can be a bit more strategic about it, once you know where you're going to go, or even if you haven't found a property, or even if you use the property that you had that you're not now going to as an example, and you could use the time to think about maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 different things, different, I don't know, strands to your bow, if you like, different things that you could do, and be a bit more strategic. I think that would be something that would strike me as perhaps a good idea.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, what we've been doing during lockdown is we've been, I don't know if targeting is the right word, but we've been targeting some quite heavy social media characters, a couple of people in the mental health world, a couple of people that do a market gardens that have got like 600, 700,000 subscribers on YouTube, and having private chats with them and just trying to bring all these people in line. So when we're ready to move forward, we've got quite a good network in the background to not only push us forward in the public eye, but also to take from their knowledge and their mistakes as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, you will, I mean, I'm sure you'll have found all day people in the land-based sector that were great sharers. You know, it's not like, you know, the canyons of commerce. You know, we genuinely, I think and hope I speak for everyone, you know, we want to help people crack on, and being, you know, from the military angle helps with that as well, that people do share, I find, very freely and very generously. But you're quite right about social media. But there again, you see, if you can whittle down, I mean, not that you'll know until you know where you are, the things that are local, the things you could do. You might be near an orchard. It depends on what your property looks like and physically what you can have there, if you like. That anyway, listen, I don't know whether anyone's got any more questions, but the one thing, Fiona, I would just love to be able to say is, whilst we can't deliver Rural Weeks until hopefully the autumn, hopefully we'll be back at Bicton in September, we are running some virtual Rural Weeks, June, July and August. So it's 3 days. It's Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. And anyone who's interested will be, I'm sure Fiona's got my details, be very, very welcome. So thank you very much for having me.
It's brilliant, Anna. Thank you very much. And Matt, I don't know if you, just to follow up, to offer another perspective, you may have already done this, but if you were listening to John T this morning, he might be a very useful contact for you. He's very well connected, and the presentation this morning was recorded, so if you missed it, you can go back to it. But also what he's doing at Farm Ed may offer you a programme that's useful, because the intention with the Farm Ed programme is to build effectively a whole load of modules, and you buy into the modules that are relevant, but you do so over a period of time, which builds a community of mutual support as you're developing your business, which may be attractive to you. The geography may not work, but I'm sure from other perspectives it would. And John T and I are also looking at doing something that's specifically military. And the last slides as we close out the day will give you the details of the next Insight Day, which I'm running, and I'm running that at John T's Farm Ed in Oxfordshire, and it's specifically oriented to families and your type of business. So there is lots going on from my perspective, and people that can help you, as well as all the others you've clearly found. So hopefully that proves useful to you. And good luck as you go around that last bit of the buoy again.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much indeed.
From me as well.
Okay.
Cheers, thank you.
So thank you, Anna. That's fantastic. Hopefully, Louise Manning, who has been stalking us all day, is now ready to take the limelight. Are you there, Louise?
I am. Hopefully you can see me.
Yes, there we go. Fantastic.
Perfect. So you're quite right. I've been lurking all day in the background. So and listening to all the presentations. Okay. So as Fiona knows, I can talk for a long time. So I will be looking to Fiona to wave at me or send me some comment if I'm getting close to time.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk.
Yeah, we've only given you 10 minutes, but I'll just cut you off.
Yeah, that's fine.
Too far. Introduce yourself, Louise. Away you go.
I will. So my name is Louise Manning, and I am Professor of Agri-Food and Supply Chain Security at the Royal Agricultural University. And I'm also involved in a farming business with my husband, which as we've been married 30 years, I've been involved with that period of time. And we are a mixed livestock business. So what I wanted to do in the time that I have is just recap a little over the points that we've raised today, and also talk a little bit about our business career gateway course. So I'm going to talk around and draw together some of the themes that I've picked up today around the focus of the business, the stage in the business where you, in the supply chain where you could work, and also your model of employment, because there's a whole range of models of employment, a little bit around access, and then look to skills, and then talk about the Rural Business Gateway course. So over the series of presentations today, we've talked about quite a range of different businesses, some which are land-based and not aligned to agriculture and food at all. Some, such as John T was talking about, which are very extensive and aimed at a very particular market, so a niche market within the food supply chain. And also there is the area of intensive food production. So we have a range of different models of food production in the UK, or more widely, if you're looking to have a career more widely. And if you are interested in the food supply chain, one of the key areas to think about which methods of food production you would align with and which fit with you and the areas that you ethics you have around food, because there are a range of different methods of food production. What you also need to think about is, are you interested in the automated elements of food production and the growing aspects of digital and digital technology? Is that where your skill set is? Are you interested in working inside or outside? And or are you more interested in that high level handwork that's associated with food and food production, or more widely when we think of horticulture and other activities? What is it that you want to do? What do you see as your future? Because there are a wide range of jobs using a wide range of skills, and many people that are on this webinar today will have different views on where they see their career lying. There's also the stage in the supply chain where you might like to work. Are you looking at agriculture, horticulture, or working in a land-based business? Are you interested in working in more of the processing sector? Are you interested in retail, food service, and everything that goes between? Are you interested in working in some of the allied businesses that are emerging? What we see in the food supply chain is a lot of outsourced businesses, especially around information technology, application of a lot of the technologies that Clive was talking about. So you will know which particular area of all the things we've talked about are important for you. And then also, do you want to be employed or self-employed? And one opportunity within land-based businesses in the food chain is the growing area and opportunities around being self-employed or engaging in contract arrangements with particular farmers, where you might have a profit share agreement, for example, or you may buy into some of the resources on the farm. They're providing the farm and the buildings for you. So there's a whole range of ways in which you can form a career that's based in the land-based sector. And then you've got to think about access. How do I build my skill set? I would call it CV positioning. And one of the challenges around the land-based sector is thinking about, what are all the skills I have and how do I position them on my CV so that they seem applicable and are perceived as being applicable to the businesses that I'm supplying to. And one of the key factors around this is, as we were saying earlier, talking to people, engaging with people, networking, and seeing how a particular skill you have is really, really important in the land-based sector. Word of mouth and trust is a key aspect of the land-based sector. Now, that doesn't mean the land-based sector is closed. It just means that people that want to work in that sector need to understand how in rural areas there are still some very strong informal networks, and how you get into those networks, how you build trust in yourself as a person that can work in those sectors is quite important. I think we also ought to remember cultural heritage, because we haven't talked much about that today, and all the aspects of looking at the cultural history of the land, how that's being used. And again, there's a raft of jobs that are growing, for example, with HS2, with infrastructure building, with people that are self-employed and then work not necessarily as an estate manager, but in terms of surveying, working with a whole range of those companies. So there's a whole range of quite different job opportunities. And I think the key part is to look at you as a person. Do you want a job where it's 24/7? Do you want a job that's more 9 to 5? Where is your family at this point in terms of the amount of input that you need into your family right now? So all of those aspects will drive everybody on this webinar to be looking at potentially a slightly different career, to be looking at personal objectives or family objectives, the income objectives that are slightly different. So we've been working with Fiona to develop a gateway course. And that gateway course is a 2-week course that's designed for you to have an opportunity to reflect, to provide you with an opportunity to develop a network of like-minded people that are also going out into the industry right now and maybe sharing many of the same challenges and opportunities that you face, and also having being able to showcase some of the wide-ranging opportunities within the agribusiness and land-based sector. It is designed to be at management level jobs, and that's where we're really focusing. So that, and it's also looking at the wider range of the food supply chain. So if you're a logistics expert, how could you translate all those skill sets into working into fast manufacturing logistics and moving food from manufacturers to retailers? If you have a skill set in data, how could you communicate that skill set and potentially work in the emerging areas of blockchain? Cybersecurity is a really large area of concern right now in food supply chains. And COVID has brought that very much to the fore in terms of the potential for disruption. So there's a whole range of jobs that sit outside perhaps what we've spoken about today in the wider food supply chain that are of value for skill sets. So I'm going to stop talking now because I'm going to give you time for some questions. But we're working on the 2-week course. COVID permitting, we're hoping to run it in October. And Fiona and I are also talking about the potential for a range of other opportunities, if you'd like, nuggets and insights into the sector that we'll be running over the summer. So I'm going to stop there.
Thanks very much, Louise. That's yeah, well, that's a record-breaking pitch from you. Congratulations. Right, has anyone got any points for Louise? And just to emphasise, she's a department head and leading an awful lot of activity in food. You can hear her on the radio. If you Google her, you can spend hours listening to her in various debates and pitches on radio and various TV segments. Extremely knowledgeable, extremely well connected, which is why it's so difficult for me to ever get hold of her, which is fantastic. Does anyone have any questions about business aspects of this sector specifically? All right. If you are interested in the course, please have a look on my website or the Royal Agricultural University's website, where there are some summary sheets and there is an application sheet. You can also find it through the LCAS website. It is accredited for ELC. Okay, thanks very much, Louise. Really appreciate that. And I'll be aware of your shadow still, I'm sure, for another half hour or so. Thanks for the contributions you made in the chat.
Thank you, and thanks for the comments. And if anybody wants to find out more, please just get in touch. Very happy to chat about opportunities or potential businesses that you could approach based on your skill set, because we've got a wide range of networks that we can talk to you about. So thank you for letting me chat.
Thanks very much. Okay, so we're now going to switch fire to Jeremy, who runs Forces Farming. And I don't even know what you're going to talk about, Jeremy, so I'm looking forward to this.
Hi, Fiona.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
You introduce yourself and crack on, Jeremy. Here you go.
Is it all right to share my screen?
Yeah, please do.
Great. Let me get on. There we go. If you let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, that's working fine.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me hit that.
Yeah, you can see the screen. I don't know if you want to go full screen or.
Yeah, that should be coming in. I've turned off everything Wi-Fi related so far, so I hope it comes through quite seamlessly. So good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as Fiona kindly introduced me, I'm Jeremy Gibbs of Forces Farming. Forces Farming was set up the idea came around at the end of 2018. That really comes from my background in farming and the agricultural industry. And the idea originally was basically to help people get into the agricultural industry who are coming from the armed forces. So I was talking to some friends of mine who are a large contractor in the south of England, and basically they were having a lot of problems finding reliable and good quality people to come into the business. So my question to them was, as I've got quite a few friends who've served, have left or been medically discharged or are still serving, was just to them, a couple of farmers, well, why have you not tried recruiting from the armed forces? And they said to me, they didn't know where to start. They weren't sure how to do it and how to basically make sure that the people were trained up and had the opportunities to develop in the industry. I'm going to walk through a few slides. I'm going to wait for Fiona to shout at me to tell me to speed up, or if anyone has any questions. As I mentioned, Forces Farming it's an opportunity to move into rural-based employment. So I structure Forces Farming around the element of sharing experience. I unfortunately didn't get to dial in till lunchtime today because I was out working on the farm this morning. But the idea being that to help people gain a bit of experience, look at things like job-specific training. If you're moving into a farm position, offer people the opportunities to be trained on the finer details of working on farms. That might be fencing, it might be loading lorries, it might be simply having a discussion at the end of a day, if you've been talking to a farmer or a customer and want to know a bit more about a certain area of the industry, or if someone has mentioned something, whether that's black grass or weeds or anything like that, or something to do with livestock. Forces Farming is here to help people gain experience, and then as well, as I say, offer job-specific training, and then as well support employment opportunities and any additional qualifications. So representing the link between the armed forces and the agricultural industry, using the connections that Forces Farming has, we provide, as I say, the opportunity to experience an area of the industry or a potential career path. So once someone knows that they want to work with animals, does that mean you want to work in terms of on a farm, working with animals, on a dairy farm, perhaps on a pig farm or a poultry unit? Or is that more in the nutritional side, maybe? Or is it potentially in some of the agri-tech areas of the business? looking at things like the apps and the systems that a lot of livestock farmers are using now. And then my background, I'll just give you a short bit of an overview here. So I've got around 20 years in the agricultural industry. I got a lot of connections that I know through that time of working in the industry, whether that's farms or whether that's manufacturers or associated partners in the industry. So using these connections, we work to find somewhere or find some experience for people across the country who are leaving the armed forces. And then as well, a little bit more about me. So I'm also a freelance journalist for the agricultural industry. So using that part of my work as build new connections with new manufacturers, new organizations. So keeping the list of potential options for people coming into agriculture open and expanding the network of forces farming partner farms and partner employers. And then finally, the other thing that, well, before we had the pandemic come out, we were planning through Forces Farming to actually have some veteran service leaver specific insight days at shows. So there are a lot of agricultural shows that go on around the country. Taking one, for example, which is called Cereals, which primarily focuses on the arable sector. So looking at grain in terms of wheat, barley, oilseed rape, things like that. One element that Forces Farming offers will be actually to have a, let's say, designated meeting point for people that have registered to come to the show and almost give you a kind of talk sheet to go around the show, do some reconnaissance, look at what's going on, look at what's happening in the industry, and then as well somewhere to come back to and have a chat with me and talk through what other potential opportunities there are or what's been found on the day. So what is the main goal and the structure of Forces Farming? So I work to something called Access to Agriculture process, preparing anyone that's registered their interest in agriculture or through the resettlement process. And that pretty much works through something called transition, experience, training and recruitment. So through people that I work with, whether that's manufacturers or farmers, Forces Farming market industry opportunities to all ranks of the armed forces. Offering experience, a friend of mine summed this element up actually in terms of a good recce is seldom wasted. So actually one quite important part, I think this has been touched on today, is gaining some experience in the industry before committing to a new career path or a new industry. And as part of that experience element, I'm working on some career and industry insight videos through a supporting organization, a friend of mine who runs something called Farming Photography. So that if before you even start looking maybe for a job in the agricultural engineering sector, Forces Farming will have a career insight video where you can go on and find out a little bit more about companies such as AGCO, who are a large manufacturer in the UK, see what their business is about, see what areas of the country they cover, see what life is like working perhaps in a dealer as an engineer or maybe in their office, even in areas such as logistics or human resources or finance. There's a large area of the industry that we can market online as well. And as I say, that is part of the Access to Agriculture process. And then we look at training. My background before I started Forces Farming was in adult education and helping people learn. So I've got a background in training, and that's where I can, depending on what position or what job someone's going into, I can offer an element of training around there. Or also looking at marketing and supporting other courses such as what you just heard from Cirencester and other courses that Fiona has worked on, or even the Rural Weeks from HighGround. So as well, sharing information around those and supporting the enrollment into those courses as well. And then finally, the recruitment as well. I'm getting more and more contact now from farmers or companies interested in recruiting directly from the armed forces. And the way I explain to them is that by working with someone like Forces Farming, they can actually almost have a proactive recruitment plan to a very good source of people and candidates. and then as well helping with anyone that's come through the Forces Farming structure, helping with CV writing and interview preparation, and then as well looking at if there's any support for the employer or the employee in terms of mentoring as you're working through the job. And as I say, that might be job-based or university or a recognised curriculum. Just a little bit on what we do around Insight Days. So what you can see on the screen, if the internet connection is keeping up, is an agricultural engineering Insight Day. So this is planned for the 17th of July to take place in Stoneleigh in Warwickshire. And AGCO have stepped up and said, we're happy to give you a training centre and a few machines. We will basically talk through what AGCO do, what opportunities there are for people that want to move into the engineering area. There will be an insight into British farming, and also we've got some local dealerships who are interested in recruiting from the armed forces as well, talking about what they do. And depending on COVID-19, we'll keep you up to date whether this is going to take place or not. But at the moment, it's still planned to go ahead. As I say, we shall see how that develops in the long term. Also, in terms of Insight Days, one thing I've just got off the phone with these guys who are based up in Warwickshire, so is looking at putting on a shepherding Insight Day. So I've had a few service leavers who've registered with Forces Farming and said we're specifically interested in looking at shepherding and understanding what opportunities there are in that area of the industry. So if you recognise the name, Mark and Emily from the Win the Wilderness programme that was on the BBC, the guys that actually won it, they have a family farm up in Warwickshire, and I've just got off the phone to them this morning actually, and they're more than happy to hold a Insight Day and make use basically of their sheep flock, their cattle herd, and look at doing some livestock handling, understanding what it's like working with animals, understanding as well what areas of the industry that can lead on to. And then as well, one other additional input that they've offered is actually looking specifically at a simple task in terms of fencing. So looking at maybe putting up a bit of fence, understanding why that's important. And as I say, this links back to having the sort of job-specific training, and especially around working on livestock farms, fencing, and that side of the work is quite important. And then as we've developed over the last couple of weeks, another partner farm who's registered to support with an Insight Day is a dairy farm which is based near Salisbury. So quite handy for anyone that is potentially in that area or close to that area of the country in the south. So Nunton Dairy Farm, they're actually quite unique in terms of they actually have a milk vending machine. So you can turn up on the farm, you can reuse glass bottles, and they're farming around about 1,200 acres. So quite a large dairy farm, but again, very, very interested in supporting the development or Insight Days with people from the armed forces. So this day would be primarily looking at things like cattle handling, understanding how important grass production is, understanding as well what other associated industries there are in the dairy sector and what opportunities there would be for candidates coming out of the armed forces that want to get into dairy farming. And with those two Insight Days, the shepherding and the dairy farming Insight Day, we haven't got a day planned at the moment until we get a clearer picture with what's happening with COVID-19. So as you see, that's three areas, that we're working on. And really the focus is to break down an element of the unknown, present the industry in a positive manner with partner farms who are interested in supporting the development of people coming into the agricultural industry and offering that entry-level experience to lead on to further jobs and opportunities. Finally, from me, I just wanted to mention how you can stay connected. So that's myself. You can find me on LinkedIn. Welcome any connections that have any questions. Have a look at the Forces Farming website. That's www.forcesfarming.co.uk. There's a little bit more information on there quite a lot more information on there about what we do and how things are developing. Feel free to drop me an email or through the website. My phone number is on there. I'm always happy to talk. Social media, so Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Forces Farming is on there. And finally, there are a few podcasts if you want to find out a bit more about Forces Farming. So if you're on Instagram or on in the podcast world, have a search for the Watchword podcast. I did a recent one with the guy there. It talked a lot about Forces Farming and what agriculture has to offer. And then as well, the 8-hour snapshot that I did recently with those guys, that's also on their system. And it was planned to be yesterday, but as with many things in farming, plans had to change. There is a podcast called Rock and Roll Farming. I'm going to be recording at the end of this week, which is going out to basically the national farmers, through the National Farmers Union, and to the rest, to the agricultural world. And one thing I wanted to mention about podcasts is if it's a fantastic source of information. If you want to listen to something different, have a look at Rock and Roll Farming. There are some very, very interesting areas that they talk about and some very interesting people that they speak to. And that is all the way from farmers in Yorkshire all the way through to vertical farming companies. That is a really good resource for gaining a bit of knowledge and as well understanding what's currently going on in the industry. So as I said, happy to connect with anyone and support the development or the transition as you're working through it. Feel free to stay connected or connect with me. And that is it from me, Fiona.
Thanks very much, Jeremy, and congratulations on making some more great contacts in the last few weeks since the last time we spoke.
Yeah.
If there are any questions, I'll give you an opportunity to ask them in just a moment. What I would like to emphasise is that there's a growing amount of resources available to people who are interested in resettling into the land-based sector. And dear, Anna, who spoke earlier, has been plugging away at this, and in the last few years, this area has become easier to get into because there is more support. It's still not quite a well-trodden path, but between Anna, Jeremy, me, and the organisations we're running, and a couple of others that are springing up, there is increasing amount of opportunity. So wherever you find that's comfortable to get that support, we then do reach across, and we really emphasise working together. So register with everybody if you wish to, or register with one. It should make no difference because we will signpost you where we can. Exactly. Okay, does anyone have any points for Jeremy and Forces Farming? Okay, I think then in that case, what I will do, thanks very much, Jeremy.
No problem, thank you.
What I'm going to do now is our final presentation is from Andy Lee. He has pre-recorded it because he is still serving in the RAF. He is busy, but I would urge you to stick with it because it's 9 minutes long and it is packed full of ideas of how he has used volunteering in his last year of service to gain the experience, and he gives examples in this piece about how that has already helped him to secure work. So I strongly advocate that this is a way to go. And if I can just work out how to share this, I will do. And this is Andy and the power of volunteering.
Hi, my name's Andy Lee, and I'm currently a serving RAF officer with about 10 months left in uniform before I leave the service after a 30-year career early next year. And when I do so, I want to work in the land-based sector. Today, I want to talk to you briefly about the value of volunteering and what, you might ask, qualifies me to do that. Well, like a lot of resettling service personnel who want to work in the land-based sector, I've been extremely conscious of the fact that my enduring interest in environmental conservation and working outdoors doesn't necessarily equate to any practical knowledge or experience that I can draw on when I'm applying for jobs or going for interviews. So over the last 9 months or so, I've worked quite hard to establish myself in a number of volunteering roles in an effort to try and gain some relevant background knowledge and experience to draw on in the future. 2 of these roles are very practical in nature. One is with the Brecon Beacons National Park, which is just on my doorstep here, and one is with the local branch of the Wildlife Trust. My total commitment to those 2 organisations on average is about 2 to 3 days per month, with the occasional resettlement training day thrown in there to attend specific activities or get involved in training events. So it's not been a huge overall commitment in the grand scheme of things, but it still has taken quite a bit of forward planning and flexibility to be able to fit those days in around my existing family and work commitments. By contrast, the other 2 roles I'm involved in are more online based and a bit more flexible. One is as the volunteer coordinator with Ruralink, so working with Fiona to plan, establish and conduct some volunteering activities for resettling personnel to get involved in. And one is as a development manager with a small community interest company that focuses on planting trees and establishing woodlands to help offset carbon emissions. So there's quite a variety of activities I'm involved in there, and it's taken quite a bit of commitment and flexibility to fit those roles in around my existing commitments. So what are the benefits that I feel I've gained from being involved with these organisations over the last 9 months or so? Well, I want to highlight 3 key aspects to you today. The first of these relates to welfare. I've found my involvement with all of these activities extremely rewarding and satisfying so far. I've found myself working in a vast array of different environments, but in all cases, I've been working with people that are like-minded, they're enthusiastic, they're committed, they're extremely supportive and willing to help. And I found the whole thing a complete contrast to my day-to-day service life. In fact, I feel like I've taken my first real step on my transition from military to civilian life by experiencing life on the other side. And it's certainly something that I'd like to continue when I leave the service, regardless of what role I actually end up becoming involved in. So from a confidence perspective and a well-being perspective, I found my volunteering work to be extremely beneficial, and I would certainly recommend it to anyone that's thinking of getting involved in similar sort of activities. The second point I want to make is about training opportunities. A lot of organisations rely extremely heavily on volunteers to achieve their objectives, and as such, they're prepared to commit time and resources to training and supporting those volunteers. Personally, to date, I've benefited from approximately £1,600 worth of free training that I've achieved through networking, identifying gaps and following up contacts and speaking to the right people at the right time, and basically being enthusiastic enough to be offered the opportunities. All the good things that we do in the military all the time. So the benefits are there to be had of training if you're prepared to go and look for them. Subject to ongoing restrictions from the coronavirus crisis, I'm confident of picking up approximately the same value of training over the next 6 to 9 months, all being well. So the opportunity is definitely there to be had. They just need to be taken. The third point I want to highlight to you is to do with support to CV writing and job applications and interviews. I recently applied for my first job in over 30 years, in fact, since I joined the RAF. It was a little bit of a trial run because timings weren't ideal for me, but I saw it as an opportunity to practice tailoring my CV and a job application to a specific role. In both cases, I drew extremely heavily on my recent volunteering activities to provide evidence that I was compatible with the essential and desirable criteria. And in fact, I was lucky enough to be one of 3 people selected for interview from 35 applicants. Again, at the interview, my answers to the questions drew heavily on my recent volunteering experience. A lot of discussion was focused around dealing with members of the public, working in small teams, problem solving, leadership, management, planning, operations, all of those things that we do all the time in the military. And while I certainly drew on my military experience very heavily, I also, to an equal amount, was able to give good examples of recent volunteering activities that I've been involved in. Ultimately, unfortunately, although I wasn't offered a job, the feedback I received was extremely positive, and on several occasions highlighted the value of the volunteering work that I'd been conducting lately. So rather than come away being pessimistic about not being offered a job, on the contrary, I was extremely optimistic that the work I was doing had been recognised, it was valued, and it was helping to level the playing field between my experience and those who had a lot more experience in the land-based field. Another point that I want to make to you is about the volunteering coordinator role with Ruralink. I mentioned that I was working with Fiona to identify, plan and conduct in-house volunteering opportunity for service personnel. The first project we're planning is going to take place at Westbury Camp in Wiltshire, home of the Army Officer Selection Board, where we're looking to turn a disused paddock area into a wildflower meadow with a pond, a footpath and a seating area, and then continue to manage the whole area for the benefit of local wildlife, the staff there and visiting students. The good thing about this project is it's completely in-house. It's on MOD land. We are working with DIO ecologists who know the area well, and all of the work is within our control in terms of time, quantity, and exactly what takes place. That means that we can offer opportunities to resettlement personnel that they can take up within their existing commitments, get involved, get some volunteering work under their belt, and get some relevant experience that they can draw on in the future. Again, coronavirus has put the initial work of that project on hold, but once we can establish some dates for future work, we'll advertise those on the Ruralink website and hope to see some of you there in a volunteering capacity to help us out with the work. Second point about that volunteer coordinator role is that it's designed to be a volunteering opportunity, an experience opportunity in its own right, to be handed on from person to person every 6 to 8 months so that as many people as possible can benefit from being involved in it. I've now been involved in the role for approximately 6 months, and so in the next couple of months I'm looking to hand it on to someone else to take advantage of the opportunities it presents. So if you're interested in taking on the role in the near future, please contact myself or Fiona in the near future to discuss it further. If you want to discuss any of the aspects I've talked about today, about the values of volunteering, or if you want to talk about getting involved in the Westbury project, or if you're interested in taking on the volunteer coordinator role, please feel free to contact me on volunteering@ruralink.org.uk. I really hope that this information has been of some use to you today, and I wish everyone the best of luck in finding their successful roles within the land-based sector in the near future. Thank you.
Sorry. Help. There we go. Sorry about that. That was all very energetic. What we've done now is gone through all the content that I've got, and I hope that's been beneficial. I just wanted to make a couple of remarks, and then we'll have plenty of time for those who want to discuss any of the detail. it wasn't meant to be quite as cattle heavy as it was, but I hope that it's offered lots of ideas. The idea of this day was to inspire and inform, and I've certainly learnt loads, so I hope you have as well. And what I've written down as one of the great themes that's underpinned it, which wasn't by my design, but which has come out from our contributors, is the value of experience. And of course, the conundrum is, as you leave the armed forces, is how on earth you get enough experience to bridge that gap into your next career. And you hear a lot of chat elsewhere about, you should take a job that's a bit below what you think because you can't possibly go in at the right level. Well, I don't think that's correct at all. I do think you have to invest in yourself, but there are, I hope we've shown lots of ways in which, with a bit of effort and a bit of time, you can create opportunities to gain experience for yourselves. You clearly need to find that experience, and as I hope I've shown, there are plenty of people starting right here, right now, with people who've been on this call to support you in finding those experience opportunities. You have to plan ahead, you have to organise yourself, and clearly you've got to present a coherent plan to your chain of command to make sure you've got the time. And I don't underestimate the difficulties that can present, but having been that chain of command in the past, people who present a coherent plan tend to be allowed to do it. People who at the last minute ask for a couple of days off tend to struggle to get that time. So, it's not 100%, but if you can get the support, get yourself booked on experiences that are just as valuable, if not more so, than courses, by the time you come to the point where you're actually applying for work, you've got things you can put on your CV that already demonstrate your commitment to the role and are tangible, real experience. And all of that builds an individual's self-confidence. It helps you identify what you really want to do, and just as importantly, rule out things that you don't want to do. If you've got contacts, you've got a network, obviously you're much more likely to be offered opportunities. And several of our contributors have made the point that you can make, if not find, but you can actually make your own roles if you approach and start with enough time to develop that. So I hope that's been of use. And to those of you who've stayed the course, thank you very much for doing that. I hope it's been valuable. We now have plenty of time for those who wish to ask further questions, or to comment, or to chat, or make any observations you wish. Over to you.
Hi Fiona, it's Richie. I'd just like to say thanks to yourself and all the speakers today. It's been very insightful and certainly given me more food for thought, especially around the volunteering piece. So I'll definitely be dropping Andy an email. Thanks.
Thanks, Richie. Thanks for spending the day with us.
It's been good. Thanks.
All right, mate. So question in the chat about presentations. Yes, 2 separate sessions this morning and the afternoon have all been recorded. I hope I'm going to be able to break it up into bite-sized chunks. That's an enjoyable task for me to wrestle with after I've been out for a bit of a walk and probably downed half a bottle of gin. But after I've done all that, I will attempt to post these presentations. And then everybody who's been on here, you're going to get an email from Eventbrite at 4 o'clock asking you for feedback. And I'd be really grateful if you could do that and give me the good points as well as the bad points, and give me the bad points as well as the good points, just so we can build on this. But I've also captured, obviously, all your email addresses. So those people who actually attended, I'll send you the presentation by default as soon as I've broken it down and worked out where and how to post it. So yeah. Any more for any more? Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to hang on here for a while, and and I'll be around, or you can phone me separately. Details are on my website, or you can get hold of me through LinkedIn. And look forward to speaking to you if I can help. Drop me a line. Some people on here I know, some I don't. If you want to get in touch, please do. Very happy to help or introduce you to other people. Before I stop talking, thanks very much to Eunice for keeping us all on track in the background. I've known Eunice for more than half my life, and she's always got my back, so it's good that you've done it again today. Thanks very much.
With pleasure, Fiona.
I feel like we're in a kind of game now where nobody's going to sign off because they know someone's going to say something really useful. Because we've all been chatting. Somebody put in the chat that they really enjoyed the chats in the breaks. So let's see if there's anybody interesting I can talk to that's going to provide entertainment. Carl's gone, so I can't get him. Will, thanks for your comment. I don't know what it looks like for everyone else, but I've had your face in front of me for most of the day, so I feel, yeah, there you are. And
for me as well.
Been excited because this morning we had the back of your cap all morning, and you've brushed your hair at lunchtime, which has been lovely.
Ffiona, everybody's signing off now, just in case you try and talk to them.
No, I know. I'm finished. I'm just teasing Will.
Look, click off.
What I've noticed is I think the prize for the most stalwart member of the group has got to go to Richard Carter, because he has had so many problems with his connection. He has been in and out of this meeting more times than he cares.
He actually apologised for it.
He did. He
tried to log on with a different web address. I noticed earlier on, and then he went back to the old one.
Multiple attempts.
And he's not here anymore. He's finally given up. He said somewhere he's too pig-headed not to give up.
Lovely to see you, Elizabeth.
And you. And could I ask you just both before I go? I was interested in why you chose Teams rather than Zoom.
Because a lot of people won't use Zoom, and they're not allowed to on corporate computers.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So security. It is more intuitive. It is much easier to use, and I know for people who dial in, they're more familiar and comfortable with Zoom.
Yeah.
And it's presented some challenges without a doubt, but that was the reason.
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. Have you heard of this new one, Starleaf?
I've heard there's several small ones coming up. I haven't tried them, I must admit.
Yeah. Right. Okay. No, that's interesting. And was it harder for you technically to use the Teams?
No, but then I deliberately didn't do anything difficult like whiteboards or breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Which I would have done or could have done. Not that I think the day needed it, but I could have done that easily in Zooms. With Teams, you've got to set it all up in advance.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult without a Google Classrooms account. If you've got a Google Classrooms account, you can do it, but I haven't. And I don't.
Anyway, you didn't really need it. It was packed full today, wasn't it? You just must say your coordination was brilliant. Anyway, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I better go and do some work now, though.
That was all good research.
Exactly. Training.
Yeah, training. It's nice to have you along, Elizabeth.
Okay, we'll speak soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So we've just got a few people left in the room.
Rebecca, are you still there? Rebecca,
she's muted.
All chorus signals, I think. Are you prepared?